Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome to episode 8 in our campaign game with Sherman Leader, the 2017 Wargame from Verssen Games. We are in the middle of our second week. All our forces are going up against a German armored battalion, and it's fair to say that our entire campaign hinges on this episode. We didn't do very well in the first part of this battle. These next two turns are critical if we want to have any chance of coming out of this campaign with a good victory. Let's dig in and get started. Here's a quick recap of where we stand so far. We're starting turn 3 of a 6-turn battle, and in the first 2 turns, things did not go well for us. We are positioned down here in this city hex, which gives us really good defense, and all our forces are here. Now to recall also as well, this is a bad weather scenario, so we're fighting in heavy rain, which means that a range of all units on the board is limited to 1 square. That's what's causing this kind of blobbing down here in the southeast corner of the map. We're up against a German armored battalion. Half of their armor has closed to within range of us. We exchanged a lot of shots back and forth in the first couple turns. Unfortunately, things didn't go well for us. The Germans knocked out Sergeant Tuanda's Wolverine, which was a huge loss for us. They also put a lot of damage on our Stuart, which is going to create problems going forward as well. In return, we took out the infantry units that advanced on us, but we only knocked out 1 of the 7 armored units in our range. We did not shoot well in the last turn, and that's what's leaving us in a very dangerous situation. It's fair to say what happens in these next 2 turns could really dictate what happens over the course of the entire campaign. We can't afford many more losses, and as we start turn 3, the big question is how aggressive will the Germans be? If these units move forward and these units continue their advance into our square for close combat, this could get really ugly. So let's see how we do, and I'm hopeful that the dice gods will be a little bit more favorable to us in this battle. Before we roll for the German tactical movement, we can do one thing, however. Sergeant Hart has attacked units. His experienced mortar team has a tactical counter, which means we can use that counter and burn it up, and we can go before the Germans go. So we're going to use that. Sergeant Hart's going to expend that tactical counter, and we're going to challenge the dice gods right away with this turn. We're going to have Sergeant Tuanda fire at the tiger. Last turn we avoided the tiger, and I feel like maybe the dice gods didn't like that. So our experienced mortar team's going to fire on the tiger. Now it normally needs a 6 to hit, but because Sergeant Hart is a good shot, we need 5s or better to hit 2 shots. Let's get this started. 5 and a 3. Oof. So we get 1 hit. The tiger needs a 4 or less to negate it, a 5 or better, and we've knocked it out. A 10! Yes! We're off to a good start. Let's see what we get for the enemy tactical movement. This is a big roll, and so far, I have to say, in our campaign, when we've needed big rolls in this, we've gotten them. And so hopefully our luck will continue here. I think we're hoping for something less than a 5. That would be good and make the enemy a little bit less aggressive. Let's see what we get. A 3. Excellent. Advance to cover for armor, which is okay. That's going to hold things up. That's going to stall the German attack. This is a good roll for us. Let's see how it plays out in the field. We can handle most everything in the back row actually fairly efficiently, and this is good for us. The armor's rules are advanced to cover, so these 3 armored units here, they cannot move forward because they're closer to us because there is no cover. So all 3 of these armored units hold their positions, which is good because we were getting overwhelming fire on us from the front line of German armor. So for having these units hold a turn, that helps us quite a bit. Now the half-tracks and the machine guns have orders to adjacent cover, which means that they have to move to the square next to them that gives them the best cover. By rule, that means they're going to fall back to this high cover terrain right here, which is the only move that they have available to them by this option. So the half-track, the machine gun, and this other half-track pull back away from us, which in one sense it's good, but in another sense is we don't want them to get too far away from us because we want to eventually be able to engage them in combat. Lastly, the anti-tank guns have orders at 3 to hold. So they will hold, and because of the heavy rain, they have no targets in sight either. So we've taken care of all of the back row of the German forces. That means that only the front row now will be engaging us in combat. So this so far so good. Boy, we've knocked out the tank, the Tiger. We've had a good roll. So this turn started off already so much better than our last turns did. Having said that, we still have a lot of fire going to be coming in on our units, and every single one of these armored units, if Sergeant Consul's Stewart here is still alive, that's its automatic target because it's the unit with the lowest defense. So let's start here with our Panzer IV. It's going to take 2 shots. It hasn't moved, so it needs 3s or better to hit. So these are good. A high likelihood these shots are going to hit. A 1 and a 6. So we get 1 hit on our unit. Sergeant Consul's Stewart has a defense of 1. Because it's in high terrain, it's a defense of 3. 3s or less to negate it. 8. We take our first damage chit on Sergeant Consul's Stewart, which, by the way, again, has already had its machine gun knocked out and its gun knocked out. Let's see if the chit gods here are in our favor. We get another machine gun hit. Let me take a look and see what that does. Yeah, second machine gun hit has no effect on this because its machine gun is already knocked out. So that's a lucky chit pull for Sergeant Consul. Next, let's go to our armored car. It needs 5s or better to hit 2 shots. 9 and a 3. Again, 1 more hit pounds into Consul Stewart. He needs a 3 or less to negate it. A 3! Excellent! The armored car is done. Let's move on to the next armored car. 3 armored units left to fire. The armored car needs 5s or better to hit 2 shots. A 10 and a 10. Oof, that's as good a rolling as you can get. 2 hits on Sergeant Consul Stewart. Needs 3s or less to negate them. I'm gonna say that's a 3. That's down on the ground, and a 10. So 1 hit. Let's pull a damage chit now for Sergeant Consul Stewart. If he survives his turn, this would be pretty amazing. Oof. That's not good. Suspension hit, so the treads are now blown off the Stewart. So its guns damage, its machine guns knocked out, its suspensions, its treads are blown off, and Sergeant Consul picks up another point of stress, raising his stress to 2. That doesn't impact his combat ability yet, but if he gets 1 more stress point, he will be shaken, which will seriously kind of deteriorate his ability to command the firing of the Stewart. So 2 units left to fire so far. Sergeant Consul Stewart's hanging in there. Let's see what happens with the last 2 units. Panzer III takes aim at the Stewart. It needs 4s or better to hit. 3 and a 10. 1 hit. Sergeant Consul needs a 3 or less to negate it. Hasn't negated anything yet, right? 6. Another damage chit. God, Sergeant Consul. Hope you brought your rabbit's foot here. We're going to pick out another one, and we get hull. So the hull means it doesn't affect the unit. However, if it takes a second hull hit, it's destroyed. So we add the hull counter to Sergeant Consul Stewart. Its hull's damage, its guns damage, its machine guns damage, and it's had its treads blown off. There's not much left of the Stewart. The last armored unit to fire this turn on us is the Panzer III. Taking aim at Consul Stewart again, it needs 4s or better to hit. 4 and a 5. It gets 1 hit. Sergeant Consul Stewart needs a 3 or less to negate it and survive the turn. A 1! Yes! When this turn started, I thought there is no way that Sergeant Consul would still have a tank left by the end of this turn. I mean, the biggest thing that helped, of course, was the German movement, that the armored units stayed back. If everything came forward, it would have involved 3 more units firing on Sergeant Consul Stewart, and that would have really made the difference. But although there isn't much left of the Stewart tank, it's still with us. And more importantly, with everybody else, it can return fire. So let's start teeing up some of these German units, and hopefully our luck will continue like it did with the Tiger tank. So one of the questions I'm asking myself is, what do we do with our infantry units that can't attack armor at range 0? The question is, do we push them forward or not? And I'm not sure yet, but let's have the units that can fire first, and then we'll make that decision. Let's start out with Sergeant Consul, see if he can get some revenge with the Stewart, with what's left of his Stewart anyway. Let's fire on the Panzer IV. So Sergeant Consul needs 7s or better to hit 2 shots. A 9 and a 6. So 1 shot rattles into the Panzer IV. It's in open terrain, so it needs a 3 or less to negate it. A 4 or better, and Sergeant Consul has had a bit of revenge. A 9! Yes, excellent. The Panzer IV is knocked out, and Sergeant Consul can smile an evil grin of revenge. Excellent. Next up, let's have Sergeant Custard Stewart try to take out one of these Panzer IIIs. Needs 6s or better, but Sergeant Custard is a good shot, so 5s or better to hit. 3 and an 8. One hit rattles into the Panzer III. It needs a 3 or less to negate, a 4 or better, and we've knocked out another armored unit. 7! Yes, the die roll gods are returning to our favor a little bit here. This is actually, I think our odds are, I'm not sure of the math on this, but I think our odds are pretty good to take out a German unit with a shot. Better than 50% for sure. So our last turn, where we only took out one with something like 5 or 6 shots, was a pretty dire stretch of bad luck there. But so far this turn, things are returning to, the dice gods are shining on us. I have a feeling they appreciated us aiming for the Tiger first. I mean, that's a bold move, and maybe they're rewarding us for that. Let's continue on. Next up, let's have Sergeant Myers with his Jumbo. Needs a 6 or better, but because he's a good shot, 5s or better to hit the remaining Panzer III. A 9 and a 2. Once again, we get one hit. Once again, the Panzer III needs 3s or less to survive, a 4 or greater, and we've knocked out our 3rd armored unit. 1. Bummer. Sergeant Myers isn't able to get the job done on the Panzer III. Let's have Sergeant Hart now try to take out the Panzer III. Sergeant Hart needs 5s or better to hit, 2 shots. 4 and a 1. The dice roll gods have shifted a little bit here. Sergeant Hart doesn't get any hits on the unit. However, we have knocked out 3 units, correct? The Tiger and 2 other armored units this turn. Now the question is what to do with our infantry. All right, so I think I've got a decision here. We're going to actually do something a little bit unorthodox, I think, but we're going to have Sergeant Zebra with his machine gun team, Sergeant Wagner with his experienced rifle squad, and Sergeant Kelly with his rifle squad, and lastly, Sergeant, who's the 903rd, Sergeant Saunders with his rifle squad, move sideways here. And my thinking is that we want to try to get up to these anti-tank units up here with infantry, because they're soft targets. Now, if they move forward, it's unlikely they're going to move forward. If they move forward next turn, it's still going to give us enough firepower on them to take them out with all the infantry that we've got down here. If they hold where they are, and these units here don't move forward, we can slide these units up to the side on the next turn and probably have some good odds at taking these out. Now we're going to wait and see what happens with the German movement. If it looks like they're going to keep pressing forward, we can shift them back and we'll still have time, because it's going to take a while for those units from the back to get within range now. So that's the rough plan. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but we'll give it a shot. And with that, we come to the end of turn 3. That was a much better turn for us. Outside of Sergeant Consul Stewart pretty much having nothing left of it, we did a lot of damage. We took out, 3 units there, which was a big step forward. The enemy held back. Now coming into turn 4, unless the Germans get a 7 or greater on their movement roll, these half-tracks and this machine gun unit isn't going to advance on us. Likewise, this anti-tank gun's likely to stay here. The armor is likely to advance depending upon the die roll, but it's still giving us a little bit better odds, 6 against 4, counting our mortar unit, of what happens down here in this engagement. So I'm a little bit more hopeful that if our luck can continue this way, we might come out of this with a little bit better result than I anticipated coming into this episode. However, one other thing to note right now I've added up the German strength points. They have 24 strength points left. If we get them to 20, it's reduced to half strength, which means it's much more likely that they're going to move backwards than forwards. So we've done pretty well now with that turn. So let's go on to turn 4 and see if our luck continues. Let's roll for the German movement. Again, higher numbers are more aggressive. I'm not quite sure what we need or what we're hoping for, but let's see what we get here. 7. That's fairly aggressive. Ooh, I think that is going to move that infantry unit forward. Armor is going to advance if it can't attack, so we'll see those armored units in the back move forward. Infantry, the rifle, the half-tracks, and the machine guns are going to advance to high explosive units, so they will move forward into that field. And the anti-tank guns will stay where they are because they can't advance to cover. So let's get busy and see how this plays out. So let's start with the units in the back here. The half-tracks and the machine guns have high explosive advance orders. They could move to either one of these squares. Thinking again, what would the Germans do? What would I do if I were the Germans? I would move them forward here to cover these anti-tank guns, seeing that we've got some infantry squads trying to slide up on the side over here. So we're going to move them there. None of them can attack because they're not in range. Likewise, the anti-tank guns have advanced to cover, which they cannot do. There's no cover available to them to advance to, so the anti-tank guns stay parked in that field, and these 5 units are taken care of. Everything else for the Germans, the armored units will move forward and attack, and of course these existing units will attack. So let's do the German attacks. I will say, again, Sergeant Consul Stewart, I hope his rabbit's foot hasn't run out, because he's going to face 6 attacks to survive this one. Let's start out with the hardest one we've got, which is this Stug unit here moving forward. It's going to fire on its least defensive target, which again is Sergeant Consul Stewart. It has a base of 3, but because it's moved, it subtract 1 from the die roll, so it needs 4s or greater to hit on Sergeant Consul Stewart. 2 shots. A 10 and a 2, so 1 hit. Sergeant Consul needs a 3 or less to negate it. A 9. Oh, another damage chit for Sergeant Consul Stewart. Come on, Sergeant Consul, keep it up. Engine 1 stress. Let me take a look and see what that one is. Okay, this is not the greatest result for Sergeant Consul. The engine means that the unit can't move. It already couldn't move because its suspension was blown off, but now the engine stopped running. It does, the more important fact, if it gets a second engine hit or a second suspension hit, it's destroyed. However, Sergeant Consul also takes another point of stress, which pushes him up to 3, meaning he's shaken, meaning at range 1 or greater, we have to subtract 2 from his die rolls, which means he's not going to be able to hit anything. It's going to be tough for the Stewart to do any more damage. And still, the Germans are not done. Panzer IV will advance and fire on Sergeant Consul Stewart again. Needs 5s or greater to hit. A 2 and a 1. Oh, nice. 2 misses. Finally, some luck for us. Same thing, though. The second Panzer IV advances into the field. 5s or greater to hit. A 9 and a 10. That's 2 hits. Sergeant Consul needs 3s or less to negate it. Come on, Sergeant Consul. Stay with us. 10 and a 4. Oh, 2 damage chits. I think this could be the end. I have a bad feeling. Oh, explosion. That can't be good. Yeah, that isn't good. Explosion reads, destroy the unit, KIA the commander, and remove them from the campaign. Return the counter to the cup. Sergeant Consul, you fought bravely. Sergeant Consul Jr., you fought bravely. Let us know if your grandson wants to continue on the family tradition. So, we've lost our Stewart. The Germans are not done yet, however. As that unit's gone, they still have 3 units left to fire on us, so the battle rages on. With the Stewart knocked out, the Germans will shift their targeting to Sergeant Custard's Sherman tank. The armored car will fire first. It hasn't moved, so it needs 5s or greater to hit. A 10 and a 3, so 1 hit clangs into Sergeant Custard's Sherman. It's a defensive 2 on the Sherman, so it needs 4s or less with the defensive terrain of the city. 4s or less to negate it. 5. Oop. Sergeant Custard takes his first damage chit. Oh my god. Our luck. Destroyed and 2 stress. So the armored tank here, let me just confirm this. Destroy the unit and remove it from the campaign. Remove the counter to the cup. Place 2 stress on the commander. So our Sherman... Oops, I forgot to pull off the Stewart as well. So let's pull the Stewart out. And now we have to pull the Sherman out. Oh my god. These 2 attacks have devastated us. Sergeant Custard survives, but he picks up 2 stress. Our campaign has gone south in 2 quick attacks. I don't see how we recover from this. But let's drive on. The Panzer III, our last remaining tank, is Sergeant Myers in his jumbo. The Panzer III will fire. It needs 4s or greater to hit. A 1 and a 3. Yes. Okay. A little bit of good luck. They both miss. The last German unit to fire is the armored car, firing again on the jumbo. It needs 5s or greater to hit. A 4 and a 10. It gets 1 hit. The jumbo has the best defense of all our armored units with a 3. Plus the city defense gives it 5s or less to negate it. Come on, let's survive this. A 1, yes. We have 1 tank left, at least. And with that, the German turn has ended. A devastating attack by the Germans. They knocked out 2 of our tanks. We've only got 1 left. Things are looking rather grim, both for this battle, in terms of how we might be able to take out the German units, as well as the campaign on the whole. But let's see what we can do in Retribution. All right, we have a couple of easy attacks. First, let's have Sergeant Hart and his mortar team fire on this Stug unit here. Needs a 6 or better, 5 or better because he's a good shot. 5 or better to hit 2 shots. Let's see if we can get some retribution. A 9 and a 6. We get 2 hits on the Stug. It needs 3s or less to survive, 4s or greater, and we've knocked it out. 5 and a 10. Yes. Okay, a little bit of revenge. That helps somewhat. Sergeant Hart has fired. Likewise, next, let's go to our Jumbo, taking on one of the Panzer IVs. The Jumbo with Sergeant Myers needs a 6, but he's a good shot. 5s or greater to hit. Let's see if we can get that. A 4 and a 10. We get 1 hit on the Panzer IV. Needs a 4 or greater to take it out for Sergeant Myers. A 9. Yes. Okay, getting a little bit of payback. And I think with that, it reduces, let me do a quick calculation. I think we've reduced the German battalion to half strength. I think it is time for our infantry to charge forward. We're going to have them advance, and if we get lucky, we should be able to take out maybe 1 or 2, even perhaps all 3 of these soft targets here if we send all 6 of our infantry units forward. That would put some stress on the units that fire, but it would put us only 4 points away from destroying the battalion, which would be a huge victory for us. So I think it's time to try to get these before they perhaps move away from us again. So we're going to start out with Sergeant Wagner moving forward, charging into the field past the German armor, and he's going to take aim at the German machine gun unit, which is up here. Now, against high explosives, he's an experienced rifle team. Needs 4s or greater to hit. He's going to pick up 1 stress because he's moving and attacking, but because he's moved, he needs 6s or better to hit. No bonus or no negation from Sergeant Wagner because he has 0s across on his shooting. So 6s or better to hit, 2 shots on the machine gun unit. Let's get it. 9 and a 4. Okay, we got 1 hit. The machine gun unit is in the open field. It needs a 2 or less to save itself, a 3 or more, and we've knocked it out. 8, yes. Excellent. Sergeant Wagner picks up the kill. We take out the machine gun unit, and he's fired. Next up, let's have Sergeant Sanders charge forward into the field as well. He's going to fire at this anti-tank gun. His odds are a little bit less. He needs a high explosive attack, is 5 or better, but because he's moved, 7s or greater to hit it. Let's get some hits here. 2 shots. 10 and a 5. We get 1 hit. Again, we need a 3 or greater to knock it out. 5. Yes. Nice work, Sergeant Sanders. We take out the anti-tank gun. Next up, we're going to have Sergeant Zebra with his experienced machine gun team do likewise, charging forward into the field and setting up his machine gun to try to take out this last anti-tank gun. Now, his movement picks up 2 stress if he moves an attack. Both Wagner and Sanders pick up 1, but he's going to add 2 stress, but I think it's worth it. His high explosive attack is excellent. It's a 1. Because he's moved, he needs 3s or greater to hit, however. We add 2 to the dice. A 3 and a 10. We get 2 hits on the anti-tank gun. 2s or less to survive, 3s or greater on 1 shot, and we've knocked it out. 1 and an 8. We've got it. That was huge for us. Some heavy damage up in the field up here. Now let's think about what we want to do with our last infantry units. We may want to hold them or just have them move forward. All right, I'm going to decide here. We're going to move our remaining 3 infantry units forward up into this field, but we're not going to have them attack. And my thinking is they're attacking armored units. They have very low odds to have any sort of success by the fact that they've moved and attacked, and if they move and attack in the same turn. And it would just add a lot more stress onto units that really we start to have to want to worry about. So we're going to move them forward since we've already exposed these targets, but we're not going to have them attack. We can have them attack next turn without picking up any additional stress. So, with that being said, this amazing series of turns comes to a close with turn 4. Let's take a little bit of an overview of the battle and see what we want to do, what we might our thoughts be going forward for the last 2 turns. So here is an overview where pretty much everything is clustered in the center of this field here. Slogging through again the bad weather and the rain and the mud, fighting here, reduced to close range. We've had a much better turn in terms of episode in terms of taking out German units, but it's going to be impossible for us to replace the loss of our Stuart and Sergeant Consul Jr., our Sherman, as well as our Wolverine. We just won't have enough special operations point to replace those. So those are heavy losses for us. We've only got 1 tank left. Now, on a battle perspective, we've reduced the German battalion to 12 strength points. To get it down, if we get it to 8, the battle is over and we've won. So we just need to wipe out 2 more of these units. So from a battle perspective, cautiously optimistic that we can pick this one up. From a campaign perspective, a couple things to note. If we were to wipe this battalion up, we would get 5 points. That would give us 14 points altogether, which on the campaign would actually give us a good evaluation. And for campaign evaluation, the units you lose don't impact your score whatsoever. So on a grand picture, we could get a good result, although it's looking very unlikely that we're going to have enough strength left in the last week to be able to get any sort of a great result. But that'll be a story when that happens. For now, we'll come up in our next episode. We'll see if we can finish off this armored battalion, and then we'll sort things out for going into our last week. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed it, likes and subscriptions, of course, are greatly appreciated. And we'll see you in our next episode for the conclusion of our Week 2 battle.